The rain came down hard that night. Not the gentle kind, the kind that soaks through leather, through bone. Route 66, outside Oklahoma City, a truck stop that had seen better decades. The parking lot was nearly empty. Nearly. Ray Calloway stood in the middle of it, 64 years old, 230 pounds of road-worn muscle and quiet scars. The patch on his jacket said, President Hells Angels, Tulsa Chapter. He wasn't looking at the rain. He was looking at her. A young woman, heavy-set, maybe 22, sitting on the wet asphalt with her back against a concrete barrier, hoodie torn at the shoulder, a bruise already forming under her left eye, a backpack clutched to her chest like it was the only thing left in the world that was hers. 3 men had just run. Ray had made sure of that. Now it was just the two of them, and the rain, and the sound of her breathing. She looked up at him. Her eyes weren't the eyes of someone who'd given up. They were the eyes of someone who had been running so long, she'd forgotten what standing still felt like. She said it quietly, almost gentle. Don't stay. A breath. They'll come back for you too. Ray didn't move, didn't take a step back, didn't reach for his phone, didn't do the reasonable thing that any reasonable man would have done. He just stood there, in the rain, looking at her. The garage smelled like motor oil and old coffee. It always did. Ray had built this space the same way he'd built most things in his life, slowly, deliberately with his hands. The walls held tools organized by size, not labeled. He knew where everything was. He'd always known. In the center of the garage sat a 1987 Harley-Davidson Softail. Not a showpiece, not a collector's item on a pedestal somewhere. A working machine, dents in the tank, scratches on the chrome, miles on the odometer that most people wouldn't believe. Ray had built it from parts. Back in 1989, 22 years old, concrete floor of a rented garage in North Tulsa. He'd traded 2 weeks of labor for the frame alone. He still remembered the afternoon it first turned over and ran. Carol had stood in the doorway of that garage holding a cup of coffee, shaking her head slowly. Raymond Calloway, she'd said, you are going to kill yourself on that thing. He'd grinned. Not today. He didn't grin this morning. This morning he worked in silence, moving around the bike with the efficiency of a man who has done something 10,000 times. Checking the chain tension, inspecting the tire pressure, testing the brake lines with 2 fingers. The tattoo on his left forearm moved as he worked. USMC 1979 to 1983. 4 years. Camp Lejeune, a posting in Okinawa. Back home to Oklahoma by 23. Older than he'd left. Quieter. The Corps had given him discipline before he knew he needed it. The road had given him the rest. On the shelf above the workbench, a photograph. Framed, not fancy. A woman with dark hair and a real laugh. A younger Ray, thinner still, with both knees working properly. Between them, a little girl with Carol's eyes and Ray's stubborn jaw holding a stuffed rabbit like she meant business. Carol, Jessica, gone 5 years now, a drunk driver, Highway 75 southbound, November 2019. The man who killed them had a good lawyer. He got 4 years, suspended sentence, was out in 18 months. Ray had not appealed, had not made speeches, had not done the things people expected a man in his position to do. He had gotten on his bike, and he had ridden. That's what he did when the world stopped making sense. He rode. Today was the 5th year, 5 years since the phone call that split his life into before and after. 5 years since he'd stood in a hospital corridor and understood for the first time what the word permanent truly meant. Every year on this date, he made the same trip. Tulsa to the cemetery, alone, no chapter, no escort, no ceremony. Just him and the bike and the road between here and the 2 names carved in granite on the east side of Oaklawn Cemetery. He packed light, 1 change of clothes, his toiletry bag, the old worn paperback he always brought and never actually read, and in the inside pocket of his jacket, 2 dried wildflowers wrapped in a paper towel. Carol's favorite. He picked them from the field behind the garage every year. He zipped the saddlebag closed, stood up, looked at the photograph one more time. I'm coming, he said quietly, to no one, to both of them. He put on his helmet, rolled the bike out into the cool October morning, sat on the saddle for a moment, feeling the familiar weight of it settle under him. Then he started the engine. The Softail rumbled to life, and Ray Calloway rode out of Tulsa on Route 66 heading south. He stopped there first. Not for long. The clubhouse was a converted auto shop on the edge of the warehouse district, cinder block walls. A hand-painted sign above the roll-up door that had been there since 1987 and wasn't going anywhere. Inside, early morning quiet. A few bikes out front. The smell of yesterday's coffee. Vince Radler was already there. 55 years old. Former long-haul trucker. Came into the chapter 15 years ago and never really left. As vice president, he had the kind of steadiness that Ray had learned to depend on without ever having to say so out loud. Vince was leaning over a map spread across the table. He looked up when Ray walked in. "Thought you were heading out early," Vince said. "I am," Ray said. "Back in 3 days." Vince nodded. He knew what 3 days meant. He'd known for 5 years. A younger member kid named Dwayne, maybe 28, had been patched in 6 months ago, looked up from his phone. "Where's he going?" Dwayne asked low. Vince didn't look up from the map. "None of your business," he said, evenly. Not unkind, just clear. That was how it worked in the chapter. A man's private business was a man's private business. Ray didn't explain himself. He didn't need to. But as Ray turned to go, Vince said, still looking at the map, "There's something you should know before you head down 66. Ray stopped. "Redstone Logistics," Vince said. "You know it?" "No." "New outfit. Showed up about 8 months ago. They run trucks down 66 Chandler, Stroud, Bristow, all the way to Edmond, on paper freight and logistics. And off paper," Vince finally looked up, "they've been leaning on the small businesses along the route, diners, gas stations, family-owned stops, telling them to pay a fee for road security. When the owners say no, things happen. Vandalism, trucks blocking their deliveries. One guy in Stroud had his water line cut." Ray said nothing for a moment. "You tell the highway patrol." 2 owners tried. Nothing came of it. Ray looked at the map, at the thin red line of Route 66 running southwest through the middle of Oklahoma. "I'll keep my eyes open," he said. "That's all I'm saying," Vince said. Ray walked out, got back on the bike. He wasn't looking for trouble. He never was. There is a particular kind of freedom that only exists on a motorcycle. Not the reckless kind, not the young man's kind, where speed is the whole point and the world blurs past like it doesn't matter. The other kind, the older kind, where you are fully present in the physical world, the road surface communicating through your hands and your spine, the temperature shifting as you move through shadow and sun, the smell of the land changing from diesel to cut grass to wood smoke as the miles pass under you. Ray had been riding for 41 years. The road didn't scare him anymore. It talked to him. He knew this particular stretch of 66 the way he knew the layout of his own garage. Every curve, every town, every place where the pavement changed character and you had to adjust. The trees were turning. October in Oklahoma, the oaks going rust and amber, the tall grass along the roadsides faded to gold. The sky was that specific pale blue that only shows up in autumn, the kind that makes everything look both clear and a little melancholy at the same time. Ray rode through it without hurrying. He had learned somewhere in his 50s that hurrying was mostly a habit and mostly a useless one. The places worth going would still be there. The people worth seeing would still be there. And the people who were no longer there, well, no amount of hurrying fixed that. The diner had been on this corner since 1965. The sign out front had been repainted 3 times. The booths had been reupholstered twice. The counter was the original Formica worn smooth in the spots where people had been setting their coffee cups for 60 years. Calhoun Cal Brisby had owned it for 11 of those years. Before that, 31 years in the coal mines of eastern Oklahoma. Before that, a childhood in a town so small, it wasn't on most maps. He had the hands to prove all of it. Wide, rough, the kind of hands that had earned what they held. He was 69 years old, walked with a slight limp from a mine accident in 2003 that had taken 2 fingers on his left hand and rearranged his left knee. He wore it the way working men wear their injuries, not proudly exactly. Just honestly, like a fact about themselves they'd made their peace with. His wife Donna had died 3 years ago. Cancer. 18 months from diagnosis to the end. He ran the diner alone now, hired 2 part-time kids from the high school to help with the rush. When the Harley pulled into the gravel lot, Cal looked up from behind the counter and something in his face shifted. Not a big shift, a small one, the kind that happens when something that's been absent comes back. Ray came through the door, brought the smell of road and cold air with him. Cal poured a coffee without being asked. Ray sat at the counter. They didn't shake hands. They didn't do the thing where men make a show of a reunion. Ray picked up the coffee, took a sip. Cal leaned against the back counter and looked at him. "You look like 70 miles of bad road," Cal said. 72, Ray said. "How's the Softail running?" "Like it always does." "Good." Silence. the good kind, the kind that exists between people who have known each other long enough that silence doesn't need to be filled. Ray ordered what he always ordered. 2 eggs over easy, toast not biscuits, more coffee. Cal cooked it himself even though that's what the high school kid in the back was there for. Some things you did yourself. They talked while Ray ate. The easy back and forth of men who had been through enough of life together that the conversation never needed a running start. Cal's daughter had called from Denver. His knee was worse, but he wasn't going to see the doctor about it. He'd started feeding a stray dog that showed up 3 weeks ago and now appeared to be a permanent fixture. Ray listened, offered small responses. Present, not performing presence actually there. Then Cal refilled the coffee and leaned both arms on the counter. His voice shifted, just slightly. You hear about what's been happening down the route? Ray remembered what Vince had told him that morning. Some, he said. Redstone Logistics, Cal said. The name sat in the air between them the way names do when they mean more than they say. They came in here about 6 months ago. 2 men in a company truck. Very polite, very professional. Told me they were offering a business protection service for establishments along the corridor. What did you say? I told them I'd been in this spot since 2013 and I hadn't needed protecting yet. What did they say to that? Cal, looking down at the counter, ran his thumb along the worn edge of it. My delivery truck got its tires slashed 2 weeks later, in my own parking lot, 3 a.m. Ray set down his coffee cup. You file a report. Sheriff's office, they came out, looked at it, wrote it down. That was 3 months ago. Cal shook his head slowly. Nothing, not a word. You're not paying them. No. Cal said it with a quiet finality that Ray recognized. A certain kind of man reaches a certain age and draws a line. Not from bravado, just because some lines once drawn don't move. I'm not paying them, but I want you to know they're out there, Ray, on your route, in case you run into something that doesn't sit right. Ray nodded. He looked down at his plate, finished the last of the eggs. Good food, he said. Cal almost smiled. It always was. The gas station at the Bristow exit was one of those places that existed in the margins of the American economy. Not a chain, not branded, a hand-painted price sign on a wooden post. 2 pumps from roughly 2001. A small convenience store attached, the windows plastered with faded lottery advertisements, and a hand-lettered sign that said, "We have hot dogs always." Ray pulled in to fill the tank. The afternoon had cooled, the kind of October chill that shows up in the shadow but disappears the moment you step back into the sun. He turned off the engine, unscrewed the gas cap, picked up the pump nozzle. That's when he saw her. She was sitting on the low concrete wall that ran along the side of the building, where the pavement ended and the scrub grass began. Maybe 20 feet away. Heavy-set, young early 20s maybe, wearing a gray hoodie that was too big for her jeans, worn sneakers with a broken lace on the left, a backpack between her feet, both arms wrapped around it, not hugging it, gripping it, the way you grip something when you're not sure if you still have the right to keep it. She was eating a package of peanut butter crackers from the vending machine. That was her meal. Ray looked at her for a moment. Just a moment. She didn't look up. He looked away. He filled the tank, replaced the cap, walked into the store. He came out 2 minutes later with a coffee for himself in a brown paper bag. Granola bar, bottle of water, banana, small bag of trail mix, gas station sandwich turkey on wheat, the kind sealed in plastic that somehow still manages to be adequate. He walked to his bike, set down his own coffee on the seat, walked to the concrete wall, set the bag down beside her. Didn't stop, didn't look at her, kept walking back to his bike. He heard the crinkle of the bag being opened behind him. That was enough. He was standing at his bike, drinking his coffee, when the 2 trucks rolled in. Pickup trucks, dark-colored. No markings except, and Ray's eyes picked this up the way they always picked things up quietly without making a production of it, a small logo on the driver's side door of each. A red compass rose, and beneath it, in small clean lettering, Redstone Logistics. The trucks pulled up near the pumps. The men inside didn't get out immediately. They just sat there, engines running. Ray watched them without appearing to watch them. The driver of the first truck was looking at the girl. Not in the way a person glances at a stranger. Longer than that, more deliberate, a look with a purpose behind it. Then the driver looked at Ray. Ray took a sip of his coffee. He didn't look away. After a moment, the driver looked back to his windshield, said something to the man in the passenger seat. The trucks pulled forward, parked on the far side of the lot. Ray finished his coffee, crushed the cup, tossed it in the trash can by the pump. He got on the bike. As he started the engine, he glanced once briefly at the girl on the wall. She was watching the trucks. Her crackers were still in her hand, uneaten. The motel was $12 more than it should have been for what it was. Ray paid in cash, took the room at the end of the row corner unit as far from the office as you could get. He'd always taken corner units. Old habit. You had two directions of sight. You had a wall behind you on two sides. He brought the bike around to park it directly outside his room door. Locked it, went inside. The room was what motel rooms in this part of Oklahoma had always been. Clean enough, functional. A bed, a TV that got 8 channels, a bathroom with a paper seal still on the toilet seat, like a kind of optimistic formality. He sat on the bed, unlaced his boots, took stock of his body the way men his age learned to do, not anxiously, just practically. Left knee as always, lower back manageable. Hands were stiff from the cold. He flexed them a few times. He thought about the trucks, about the logo on their doors, about the way that driver had been watching the girl. He thought about Cal's slashed tires, about Vince's words that morning. He set it aside. It wasn't his business. He wasn't here to make it his business. He lay down on top of the covers, still dressed. Set an alarm for 6 a.m. He was asleep in 4 minutes. He woke at 2:17 a.m. Not from the alarm, from the knock. 3 knocks, quiet, almost hesitant. Not the knock of a threat, the knock of someone who wasn't sure they had the right to knock at all. Ray was on his feet before he was fully conscious. 40 years of motorcycle culture, 4 years of the Marines before that. His body remembered things his mind hadn't caught up to yet. He moved to the door, not directly in front of it, to the side. "Who is it?" A beat of silence. Then a voice. Young, female, trying hard to sound steady and not quite getting there. "The girl from the gas station. I'm not going to bother you. I didn't know where else." Ray opened the door. She was standing there in the dark. Same hoodie, same backpack, still clutched to her front. Her eyes were wide and trying not to show it. Behind her, across the parking lot, Ray's gaze moved past her, immediate and practiced. He saw it. On the door of the room she'd been in, room 4, about 30 feet away, someone had used something sharp to carve a single mark into the painted wood. An X. Clean lines, deliberate, not vandalism, not random. A mark with a meaning known to the person who made it and the person meant to find it. Ray looked at it for 1 second, looked back at her. He opened the door wider. "Come in," he said. She hesitated, just briefly, as if some part of her was still calculating whether this was a trap of a different kind. Then she came inside. Ray turned on the lamp by the desk, low light, sat in the desk chair. Let her have the bed. She stood beside it, not ready to sit yet. He looked at her properly for the first time. 22, he now thought, maybe 23. The bruise under her left eye wasn't fresh, 3 or 4 days old, yellowing at the edges. There were dark circles underneath that had nothing to do with the bruise, the kind that come from not sleeping in a real bed for a while. She was watching him the way a person watches something they don't fully trust, but are running out of options about. "I'm Ray," he said. "I know," she said. "I saw your jacket." "What's your name?" A pause. She was deciding how much to give away. "Ren," she said finally. "How long have you been out here, Ren?" She looked at the floor. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Sleeping where she could, eating gas station food, holding on to whatever was in that backpack like it was the last thing standing between her and something worse. Ray didn't push. He'd been in enough hard conversations to know that you didn't dig for the story. You made space for it. You let it come in its own time. He stood up, moved to the small coffee maker on the dresser, filled it with the complimentary packet, turned it on. "You don't have to tell me anything," he said. His back was to her. "But you're not going back out there tonight. That's not a question." She didn't answer right away. He turned around, handed her the room key. "I'll sleep in the chair," he said. "Lock the deadbolt when I step outside. Don't open it unless you hear my voice." She looked at the key in her hand. Something moved across her face, something complex, the way a person looks when they've been braced for the world to be a certain way, and it suddenly isn't. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Ray looked at her for a moment. "Because it's cold," he said, "and because whoever made that mark on your door is still out there." He pulled his jacket back on. "And because my daughter would have been 23 this year." He said it simply, without drama, just a fact he'd decided to offer. He stepped outside, stood in the dark parking lot, and looked at the mark on door number 4. Clean X, made with something sharp. Deliberate, not for her. He understood that now. The mark wasn't a threat to Ren directly. It was a message to anyone sheltering her. We know she's here. We know you helped her. Think carefully about what comes next. Ray stood in the cold for a long moment. The night was quiet except for the highway in the distance. He thought about Carol, about Jessica, about the way the world could narrow down to a single wrong decision by a single thoughtless person and take everything from you in a moment. He thought about a girl sleeping in a gas station parking lot for 3 weeks, holding on to something in a backpack because someone had trusted her with it and paid a price for that trust. He thought about the X on the door. He went back to his chair. He didn't sleep again that night. They left before 5 a.m. No conversation about it. Ray was already packed when Wren unlocked the deadbolt. She looked at him. He looked at her. She came outside. The morning was cold and still. The parking lot empty. No dark trucks, no watchers. But Ray knew how these things worked. They didn't need to be here to be watching. He handed her a spare helmet from the saddlebag. She looked at it. Have you ever been on a motorcycle? No. Hold on. Lean when I lean. Don't fight the turns. She pulled the helmet on. It was slightly too big. She looked in that moment very young. They rode west into the gray light of early morning. The miles passed. The sun came up slowly behind them, painting the road ahead in long orange light. After a while, Wren spoke. She had to raise her voice slightly above the wind. I worked at a warehouse outside Chandler, Redstone Logistics. Ray kept his eyes on the road. I was doing night shifts, inventory and loading. Good money for a second job. I needed it. I was trying to pay off the first year of school. A pause. 3 weeks ago, I was doing a late shift. I went down the wrong corridor, the part of the building that was supposed to be cold storage. Door was unlocked. It shouldn't have been. She stopped. What was in there? Ray asked. Women, she said. 10, maybe 12 of them. In bad shape, mattresses on the floor, no windows. Ray's jaw tightened. He kept riding. There was a guard, Cole. He came around the corner and saw me standing there. I thought he was going to. Her voice stopped again. But he didn't, she said. He looked at me, and then he pulled something out of his jacket, a USB drive. And he said, take this. Run. Don't call the county sheriff. And then I ran. She said it flat. No drama, just the reality of it. I've been running since. Cole, what happened to him? He was gone 2 days later. Nobody at the warehouse would talk about it. Ray didn't say anything for a while. The road hummed beneath them. You opened the drive, he asked. No, she said. I'm scared to. Why, Bob? Because once I know what's on it, I can't not know. Ray understood that. He understood it better than she probably realized. Some information changes you. Once it's inside you, you carry it everywhere. You can't set it down. You can't unknow it. The question was never really about what was on the drive. The question was about who Wren Delacourt was going to be on the other side of knowing. He found out the answer to that question later. It was not the answer he expected. But that is a story for what came next. The library opened at 9. They were waiting outside at 8:53. Wren had the USB in her hand, just holding it. Turning it over between her fingers, the way you turn over a stone you found on the ground. Knowing it's just a stone, knowing it's just a piece of plastic and metal, and still not quite able to shake the feeling that something is living underneath it. Ray stood beside her on the sidewalk, drinking coffee from a paper cup he'd picked up at the gas station 2 blocks back. He didn't rush her. The library was a small building, red brick, an American flag out front, a hand-lettered sign in the window that said, used book sale, Saturdays all proceeds to children's literacy. An older woman unlocked the front door from inside, smiled at them through the glass. Small towns. People still smiled at strangers in small towns. Ray held the door. They found a computer terminal in the back corner, away from the front windows. Ray stood behind and slightly to the left of Wren, where he could see both the screen and the room. Old habit. Wren plugged in the drive. It loaded. 3 folders. The first was labeled Manifests. The second, Financials. The third had no label, just a date. September 14th. Wren opened the first folder. Photographs. Dozens of them. Taken on a phone in low light at angles that said the photographer was not supposed to be taking them. The inside of a warehouse. Not the loading bays. The back section. The part with no windows. Mattresses on concrete floors. Buckets in the corners. A single bare bulb hanging from a wire. And women. Different ages. Different faces. The same look in their eyes, that particular absence that comes not from stupidity, but from the deliberate suppression of hope as a survival strategy. Wren made a sound. Small. Involuntary. Ray said nothing. He looked at the photographs with the steady, slightly removed attention of a man making himself catalog something he would rather not see. because looking away was a luxury, because someone had to look. Cole Pritchard had looked. And then he'd handed this drive to a 22-year-old girl and told her to run. Ray opened the second folder, financial records, spreadsheets, transfer documents, 7 company names that meant nothing on their own LLCs holding companies' names that sounded like law firms or real estate offices. The kind of names designed to be forgettable, to blur together. Ray wasn't an accountant, but he'd been president of a chapter for 11 years. He knew how money moved when it was trying not to be seen. He took out his phone, photographed 5 pages of the spreadsheet, put the phone away. Then he opened the third folder. One photograph, high resolution, taken from further away than the others, a longer lens, or zoomed in from across a room. 2 men, shaking hands, inside the warehouse. In the background, barely visible, one of the mattresses, one of the bare bulbs. One of the men was the warehouse manager, whose name appeared on the manifest documents. Ray had seen his name 3 times already in the paperwork. The other man, Ray looked at him for a long moment. Pressed suit, silver hair well kept. The particular posture of a man who had spent decades in rooms where other people deferred to him. Ray didn't recognize the face, but he recognized the type. "Do you know who this is?" he asked Ren. She leaned in, looked at the second man. "No," she said. "But Cole, when he gave me the drive, he said one thing. He said, 'The man in the photograph runs this whole region. Don't let them bury this.'" Ray looked at the photograph for another moment. Then he ejected the drive, handed it back to Ren. "Keep it on you," he said. "Not in the bag, on you." She put it in the front pocket of her jeans. "What do we do now?" she asked. "I need to make a phone call," Ray said. There were almost no phone booths left in Oklahoma. This one survived because the post office it was attached to was the kind of post office that had survived everything: rural route changes, budget cuts, 2 floods, on the basis of sheer civic stubbornness. Ray used it because he didn't want to use his cell phone. He was old enough to know what cell phones left behind them. He dialed a number he knew from memory, had known for 20 years. It rang 4 times. Voss? Harlan Voss had the voice of a man who had spent 31 years with the FBI answering phones at all hours and had made his peace with it. 67 years old. Retired technically to a house in Broken Arrow, where he grew tomatoes and drove his wife to her book club on Thursdays, and occasionally consulted on cold cases when a former colleague called with something that needed a careful eye. He and Ray had met in 1987 at a bar in Tulsa during a situation that neither of them talked about in detail. What mattered was they'd both done the right thing in a moment when it would have been easier not to. That kind of shared history didn't expire. "It's Ray," Ray said. "I know who it is," Harlan said. "You're the only person who still uses a landline." "Redstone Logistics. Oklahoma, what do you know?" Silence. Shinom. Not the silence of a man who doesn't know. The silence of a man deciding how much to say. "Where are you calling from?" Public phone. "Good. A beat. How did you come across that name?" "Does it matter, Ray?" Harlan's voice shifted, dropped slightly, the way a voice drops when it's about to say something it would prefer not to say. "The name behind Redstone, you know him. You've met him. You took a photograph with him." Ray said nothing. 3 years ago, September, Tulsa Civic Charity Gala. The chapter attended. There were photographs. The man's campaign has been using one of them. Ray's hand tightened on the receiver. "Sterling Page," Harlan said. The name landed like a stone dropping into still water. Sterling Page, County Commissioner, Lincoln County, Oklahoma, currently running for state senate. The kind of politician who showed up at every ribbon cutting and every charity event and every community dinner, who shook every hand and remembered every name, who had built an entire public identity on the idea that he was of the people, the rural people, the working people, the people who felt left behind. He'd stood next to Ray at that charity event, shook his hand, said something about the important work your community does. The photograph had ended up in a campaign mailer. Ray Calloway, President, Hells Angels Tulsa, standing beside Sterling Page, smiling. Used as evidence that Page connected with all segments of the community. Ray had seen it once secondhand, had felt the low irritation of being used, but it hadn't seemed like more than that. "Page is the man in the photograph," Ray said. It wasn't a question. "Almost certainly," Harlan said. "I can't confirm without seeing it, but the description fits, and Redstone connects to him through 3 layers of corporate structure. You've been looking at this. Quietly, for about 4 months. There isn't enough for a federal case yet. There isn't enough for anything yet, which is why the right people are being very patient." Harlan, "Yeah, I have the drive." Another silence. Longer this time. Ray, listen to me carefully. Do not use your credit cards. Do not use your chapter membership card anywhere. Keep your cell phone off. Where are you headed? I was going to Oaklawn. Not yet. You need to move, and you need to move carefully. I'm going to make some calls. Don't do anything until you hear from me. Ray hung up the phone. He stood outside the post office for a moment. The small town morning went on around him. A woman walked past with a grocery bag. A dog crossed the street without hurrying. A flag snapped in the October wind above the post office door. He looked normal. He knew that. Inside, something had shifted. He walked back to where Ren was waiting with the bikes. She was sitting on the curb, backpack between her feet, watching the street with those two alert eyes. Well, she said. The man in the photograph, Ray said. His name is Sterling Page. Ren stared. The county commissioner, the one running for Senate. Yes, she processed this. Cole knew that, she said quietly. Cole knew who he was, and he still gave you the drive, Ray said. Yeah. They sat with that for a moment. What do we do? Ren asked. We move, Ray said, and we stop leaving tracks. They took the back roads. Ray knew them. Not because he'd planned this route, but because 40 years of riding this corridor meant the back roads were as familiar to him as the main highway. The ones that ran parallel to 66 through the farmland. The ones that showed up on paper maps, but not on phone navigation. He didn't use his phone. It was off and in the saddlebag. Ren's phone, he'd told her to turn it off before they left the library. She'd done it without argument. They rode in silence for a while. The landscape out here was flat and wide. Fence lines and bare fields and the occasional farmhouse set back from the road. The sky was enormous and starting to cloud over from the west. Weather coming? Ray watched it the way he always watched weather on the road. Practically, not with worry, just with the constant low-level attentiveness that kept you alive out here. After about 40 minutes, he pulled over at a farm road intersection. Cut the engine, let the silence settle. Tell me about your grandmother, he said. Ren looked at him. The question surprised her. Why? Well, because I need to know who we're protecting. She looked down the empty road, thought about it. Her name is Ruth Delacourt. She's 74. She lives in El Reno. A pause. She raised me. My mom left when I was 4. My dad, I don't really know my dad. Ruth is, she stopped. She taught 3rd grade for 31 years, Ren said. At the same elementary school in El Reno. She made quilts. She made the best biscuits I've ever eaten in my life. She has a garden with tomatoes and a bird feeder she refills every Sunday morning. Her voice was level. She was keeping it level by effort. She doesn't know where I am, Ren said. I couldn't call her. I didn't want to. I didn't want to put her in the middle of it. She's already in the middle of it, Ray said, gently but directly. Whether you called her or not, that's how these people work. Ren nodded. She'd known that. She just hadn't wanted to know it. We're going to make sure she's safe, Ray said. That's the first thing, before anything else. Ren looked at him. You don't have to do this, she said. This isn't your problem. Ray looked back at her for a long moment. There were many things he could have said. He said, start the engine. The Oklahoma Highway Patrol rest stop was a simple thing. A parking area, a small building with restrooms, a flagpole, a vending machine. Ray pulled in, parked in the center of the lot in full view of the road. Ren looked around. Why here? Because the Suburban that's been behind us since Stroud, Ray said quietly, is parked on the road, shoulder about a quarter mile back, and it won't come in here. Ren turned her head. Don't look, Ray said. She turned back. Her jaw was tight. How long have they been following us? Since we left the library. How my fault, Ray said. He said it the way he said most things straightforwardly, without making a performance of accountability, just stating a fact. When we left Bristow this morning, I fueled up at the pump. I used my chapter membership card by habit. It's connected to a fuel network. Somewhere in that network, Redstone has access to purchase data. They flagged the card, picked up our location. Ren stared at him. It was one card, one transaction, old habit. That's how they found us. That's how they found us. Ren was quiet for a moment. Then, and Ray noted this, she didn't get angry. She didn't panic. She just nodded slowly, filing it away. So what do we do? Tonight we stay here, in the lot. They won't come in here. We sleep in the parking lot of a highway patrol rest stop. Yes, she looked around the lot. The flagpole, the vending machine. Okay, she said, simply. Ray looked at her. He was starting to understand something about Ren Delacourt. She was not fragile. She had never been fragile. The world had decided something about her based on how she looked, and she had been carrying that verdict for years, and she had kept going anyway. That was not weakness. That was the opposite of weakness. He just hadn't seen it clearly until now. They ate from the vending machine. Ray had exact change. They sat on the picnic bench outside the restroom building. The night had gotten cold. Ren had her hoodie zipped to the neck. Ray had given her his spare jacket. She'd argued briefly. He'd put it around her shoulders and gone back to the bench without discussion. The Suburban was still on the shoulder a quarter-mile down the road. He could see the faint shape of its headlights in the dark. Not moving. Waiting. Patient, Ray thought. Organized. That told him something about who he was dealing with. Disorganized criminals panicked. Disorganized criminals made noise. The people in that truck were neither panicking nor making noise. They were professionals. Ren finished her food, looked at Ray. Can I ask you something? You can ask. Your family, what happened? Ray looked out at the dark. Car accident. November 2019. My wife Carol and my daughter Jessica. A drunk driver hit them on Highway 75. I'm sorry, Ren said. Thank you. How old was she, Jessica? 31. Ren was quiet for a moment. The man who did it got 4 years suspended, 18 months served. That's not... No, Ray agreed. It's not. Were you angry? Ray thought about the question seriously, the way it deserved. I was, he said, for a long time. Long enough that I had to make a decision about it, about whether I was going to carry it or whether it was going to carry me. Which did you choose? I'm still working on it, he said. That's an honest answer. Ren looked at him. You seem like a man who's figured things out, she said. I seem that way, Ray said. It's not the same as being that way. She almost smiled at that, almost. Her phone lit up at 10:47 p.m. She turned it back on for 10 minutes to check Ray had said she could briefly once, and then it went back off. The notification came in before she could close it again. A text, unknown number, a video file. She opened it. 8 seconds of footage. A kitchen, an older woman sitting at a table, silver-haired, small, her hands folded on the table in the deliberate way of someone trying to show that they are calm. Ruth Delacourt. She looked into the camera without expression. Then the video ended. Beneath it, a text message. Deliver the drive by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Location to follow. In exchange, she stays comfortable. You have until morning. 20 hours. Ren put the phone down on the picnic table. Slowly, the way you set something down when your hands aren't fully reliable anymore. Ray had been watching her face. He said nothing. He waited. Ren looked at the phone. She looked at the dark road where the Suburban was waiting. She looked at the backpack between her feet. Something moved across her face. Ray watched it move. He watched her process the fear, feel it fully, not push it away, and then watched her come out the other side of it into something harder and clearer. She picked up the phone. Ray said, Ren. She was already dialing the number. It rang once, a man's voice, flat, professional. You received our message. Yes, Ren said. Her voice was steady. I'll bring the drive, but I choose the location. A pause. That's not how this... Yes, it is, she said, because if you want this drive before it goes to AP News, you'll meet me where I say. 7 a.m. Guthrie. I'll send the address. She ended the call. She turned the phone off, set it down again. Her hands were shaking. Ray could see that. She wasn't hiding it. She wasn't pretending, but she'd made the call. Ray looked at her for a long moment. Where'd that come from? He asked. She looked at him. I've been running for 3 weeks, she said. I'm done running. Ray called Harlan from the rest stop payphone. The plan took shape in pieces the way real plans do, not clean, not complete, but functional. Harlan would go to El Reno. He had a former colleague, retired State Bureau, completely clean. Together they would get to Ruth Delacourt before morning. Nora Bassett, or he made the second call. He'd known Nora for 16 years. She was 68 years old and had been running the Guthrie Tribune since 1986. She'd covered the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995 from 30 miles away, and had never once in her career published something she hadn't verified twice. She was the most careful journalist Ray had ever met, and she was awake at midnight because she was always awake at midnight. Ray told her what he had, what was on the drive, who was in the photograph. Nora was quiet for a long time. Then she said, get here by 5 a.m., son. I need 2 hours to verify. And if it checks out, it goes to AP at 6, and I'll be standing outside with a camera at 7. Ray hung up, stood in the dark outside the payphone. He thought about calling Vince. He dialed. Vince, he said when it answered. One question. Do you know a name Felix Drummond? No, Vince said immediately, confused. Should I? Ray listened to the confusion, the honest confusion of a man who didn't know what he was being asked or why. No, Ray said, go back to sleep. He hung up and stood for a moment in the dark with something he hadn't expected to feel. He had been in the back of his mind suspicious. Not of Vince specifically, of everyone. Because that was what pressure did. It turned a person inward, made them doubt the people they'd trusted for years, made them see angles in everything. And here was Vince, confused and sleepy at midnight. Just a man Ray had worked beside for 15 years. Just a man who didn't know anything and had nothing to do with any of this. Ray had almost let the weight of the situation turn him into someone who suspected everyone. That was how fear worked, he thought. It didn't just make you afraid of your enemies. It made you afraid of your friends. He'd caught it in time. That mattered. He walked back to the rest stop. Ren was sitting on the picnic bench in his jacket looking up at the sky. The clouds had moved through and the stars were out now, sharp and cold. Everything set, she asked. Everything set, Ray said. My grandmother. Harlan will have her out before dawn. She'll be safe before we get to Guthrie. Ren looked back at the stars. She's going to be so angry at me, she said, for not calling her for 3 weeks. Probably, Ray said. And then she's going to make me eat, Ren said. She always makes me eat when something goes wrong. Sounds like a good grandmother, Ray said. The best, Ren said. Simply, without sentiment, just as a fact she was sure of. Ray sat down on the bench beside her. Not close, just present. They sat there for a while. The highway was quiet. The Suburban on the shoulder had not moved. Raytown, Ren said. Yeah. Why did you really stop to help me at the gas station before you knew any of this? Ray thought about it. The honest answer. Because you were holding that backpack like someone had trusted you with something important, he said. And the world doesn't have enough people who honor a trust. Ren looked at him. That's all? That's not a small thing, Ray said. She thought about that for a moment. Cole trusted me, she said. He gave me that drive, and he didn't know me. She stopped. He just decided I was someone who would do the right thing with it. Were you? She looked at the dark road ahead. I'm trying to be, she said. That's all any of us can do, Ray said. The stars were bright, the Suburban was still waiting, morning was 6 hours away. The house was small, white clapboard siding, a front porch with 2 rocking chairs, a bird feeder on a wooden post near the front wall catching the light from the street lamp. The garden along the side fence was put to bed for winter, cut back, mulched, waiting. The kind of house that had been lived in for a long time by someone who cared about it. Harlan Voss sat in his car across the street for 4 minutes before he moved. He was 67 years old and his knees weren't what they used to be, and he hadn't done field work in 6 years, but 31 years with the Bureau had given him something that didn't expire with retirement. Situational reading, the ability to look at a scene and understand its grammar. 2 men. One parked in a sedan on the near corner, engine off, windows fogged slightly, which meant someone had been breathing in there for a while. One sitting on the back porch of the house, visible through the side gate, smoking. Not local police, not any kind of official presence, private security, or something that passed for it. His former colleague, Walt Greaves, 62, 28 years, with the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, completely and verifiably clean, was parked 1 block east. Harlan texted him 2 words. 2 contacts. Walt texted back 1 word. Ready. It took 11 minutes. The man in the sedan didn't see Harlan until Harlan was already at his window. By then it was too late for anything useful to happen. Walt handled the back porch. Neither man was armed with anything that elevated the situation, which told Harlan they were watchers, not actors, hired to observe and report, to make Ruth Delacourt understand without doing anything that could be prosecuted that she was being watched, that she was leverage. Harlan zip-tied both of them to the same drain pipe on the side of the house, professionally, without malice. He'd done worse things for worse reasons in his career, and he could live with this very comfortably. Then he knocked on the front door. The porch light came on, a pause. The door opened. Ruth Delacourt was 74 years old and 5'2", and she looked at Harlan Voss through the screen door with the focused assessment of a woman who had spent 31 years evaluating whether a child in her classroom was telling her the truth. Harlan showed her his retired credentials, explained who Ray was, explained who Ren was working with. Ruth listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "Is Ren safe?" "Yes, ma'am." "Is she scared?" Harlan considered the question honestly. "She was," he said, "less than she was yesterday." Ruth looked at him for a moment longer. "Come in," she said. "I'll put on coffee." "Ma'am, we really should." "You tied 2 men to my drain pipe. Ruth said, opening the screen door. The least I can do is give you coffee before you explain to me what happens next. Harlan came inside. The kitchen was warm, a quilt folded over the back of a chair, a ceramic mug tree on the counter with 6 mugs each, one different, the kind accumulated over decades, each one a small piece of someone's memory. Ruth set the coffee going and sat down at the table across from Harlan. She folded her hands. She didn't call me, Ruth said, for 3 weeks. She was trying to protect you. I know why she didn't call. Ruth looked at her hands. She's been protecting people her whole life. She learned it young. When you're the kind of child the world decides to be unkind to you, learn very quickly to make yourself small, to not need things, to manage alone. Harlan said nothing. She was 10 years old, Ruth said. She came home from school one day and told me that the other children said she took up too much space. Her voice was even, careful. 10 years old, and she was already apologizing for existing. The coffee maker finished. Ruth got up, poured 2 cups without asking. I told her, Ruth said, setting a cup in front of Harlan, that she didn't take up too much space, that she took up exactly the right amount of space, that she was exactly the right size for who she was supposed to be. She sat back down. I don't know if she believed me, Ruth said, but she's believed it more and more every year. I can see it. She looked at Harlan. This man, Ray, he's good. He's one of the best people I know, Harlan said, and meant it. Ruth nodded slowly. Good, she said, because my granddaughter deserves to be helped by good people. She picked up her coffee. Now, tell me what happens next. Nora Bassett had been awake since 2. This was not unusual. The Guthrie Tribune was a weekly paper that had been operating since 1902. Nora had been its editor for 38 years. She had outlasted 3 ownership changes, the internet, the collapse of local advertising, and a flood in 2007 that had taken out the ground floor of the building. She was 68 years old. She had reading glasses on a chain around her neck and a coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Journalist" that her daughter had given her as a joke and that she used every single day. When Ray and Wren came through the back door at 4:58, Nora looked at them both over the top of her reading glasses. Then she looked at the USB drive in Wren's hand. Show me, she said. They worked in the back room. Nora had 2 monitors. She opened the drive on one. She had a legal pad and a pen on the desk. She took notes. Longhand always had it, made her think more slowly, and that was never a bad thing. She worked through the financial documents first. She had a source at the State Commerce Office she could call at 5 a.m. because she had been calling him at unreasonable hours for 20 years, and he had stopped being surprised by it. She called. He confirmed 3 of the company names as registered LLCs with page-connected interests at the beneficial ownership level. She worked through the photographs. She had a former colleague at the Tulsa World who had covered Sterling Page for 4 years, also awake, also not surprised to hear from Nora at this hour. The man in the photograph, Nora said into the phone, silver hair, about 6'1", distinguishing marks, small scar above the left eyebrow. A pause on the other end. That's Page, the colleague said. I'm certain of that. I've interviewed him 4 times. Nora made a note, underlined it twice. She worked without rushing, but without wasting a movement. Ray sat in the corner and watched her with the appreciation of someone who recognized craft. He had built motorcycles from parts for 40 years. He understood what it looked like when a person knew their work completely. Wren sat beside Nora answering questions when Nora asked them. Dates, times, details about the warehouse, about coal, about the 3 weeks of running. At one point, Nora stopped, looked at Wren over her glasses. You've been carrying this for 3 weeks, Nora said. Yes. Alone. Until Ray. Nora looked at Ray briefly, then back to Wren. You did the right thing, Nora said, directly, simply, not as a comfort, as a statement of fact delivered with the authority of someone who had been distinguishing right from wrong in print for 4 decades. Wren looked at her. Something in Wren's face shifted very slightly. Not a big shift, the kind that happens when something you needed to hear gets said by someone whose judgment you instinctively trust. Thank you, Wren said quietly. Nora was already back at her monitor. Don't thank me yet, she said. Thank me when this runs. At 5:58 a.m., Nora sat back in her chair. She took off her reading glasses, rubbed the bridge of her nose, put them back on. It checks out, she said. Everything I can verify within the time I have, it checks out. The financial connections are real. The company structures are real. Page is the man in the photograph. She paused. The women in those photographs, the situation at that warehouse is real, and it is ongoing, and it is exactly what it looks like. The room was quiet for a moment. I'm sending this to AP at 6, Nora said. I have a contact there who will move on it fast. By the time Page gets to his podium this morning, this will be in the national wire. She looked at Ray. You're certain about the location for the handoff? Ren chose it, Ray said. Nora looked at Ren. Our parking lot, Ren said. Right outside. Nora almost smiled. In 40 years of this job, she said, I have never had a story delivered to my parking lot. She turned back to her monitors. Don't be late, she said. The morning was cold and gray, the sky the color of old pewter, the kind of morning that felt like it was holding its breath. Ray and Ren stood beside the Harley in the Tribune parking lot. Ren had the USB in her hand. The real one was already inside with Nora, had been since 5:15. Nora had made 2 copies. The drive Ren was holding, the one she would hand over, was a blank. Same model, same weight. Ren turned it over in her fingers. Ray stood beside her, not in front of her, beside. You don't have to be the one to hand it over, he said. Why, I do, she said. Why? She thought about it. Because Cole gave it to me, she said. Not to anyone else. He made a choice. I want to be the one who finishes it. Ray looked at her. Okay, he said. They waited. At 6:53, a black SUV turned into the parking lot. Then a second one behind it. They parked across the lot. 4 men got out. Business clothes. The particular way of moving that said ex-military or ex-law enforcement redirected into private money. The man who walked in front was in his 40s, broad, a face that had learned not to show things. He looked at Ren, looked at Ray, looked at the building behind them. His eyes moved to the second-floor window. Nora Bassett was standing there, with a camera. The man's face changed, very slightly, the stillness of a person who has just understood something 2 seconds too late. He looked back at Ren. The drive, he said. Ren held it out. He reached for it, and then the other 3 men moved. Not toward Ren, past her, toward Ray. The thing about men who have been trained is that they are predictable in one specific way they execute the plan. Even when the plan has already failed, because stopping the plan requires acknowledging the failure, and that takes a moment, and in that moment they are still moving. Ray was already moving too. What happened in the next 40 seconds was not cinematic. It was not graceful. It was 2 men in their 40s hitting a 64-year-old man who had been riding motorcycles for 40 years and had spent 4 years in the United States Marine Corps, and who had, over the course of a long and complicated life, been in enough situations like this one to know that the first 3 seconds determined everything. Ray took the first man's momentum and redirected it, stepped inside the second man's reach before he could extend. The third came from the left. He was fast. Ray was faster in the ways that mattered. It hurt. He wouldn't pretend it didn't hurt. His shoulder took something it wasn't supposed to take, and his left knee, already unreliable in October, cold buckled once before he caught himself. But when it was over, 2 men were on the ground. One was backing away. The fourth, the lead man, had not moved. He was standing very still, looking at Nora's camera in the window, the blank USB drive in his hand, and understanding with the clarity of a man whose plan has completely collapsed around him exactly how this morning was going to end. Ren was on the ground. She'd been knocked sideways when the men rushed past her. Her elbow was scraped. Her cheek, the one that already had the fading bruise from 3 weeks ago, had taken the concrete. She was sitting up, breathing. Ray dropped down beside her. I'm okay, she said, before he could ask. She looked up at him. Standing in the gray morning light, 2 men on the ground behind him, his shoulder clearly wrong, his expression completely steady. She said it quietly. Don't stay. A breath. They'll come back for you too. She said it the way you say something when you're testing whether it's still true, when you already know it isn't. Ray looked at her, did not move, did not take 1 step back. Not a chance, he said. The sound of sirens arrived 4 minutes later. Oklahoma State Highway Patrol, not county. State. Nora had made a second call at 6 a.m. the same time she'd sent the APE wire. An old contact with the State Bureau, someone completely unconnected to Lincoln County, someone who owed her a favor from 2009 and had been waiting for a reasonable way to return it. The 4 men were taken into custody. The lead man said nothing. The other 3 said various things that would not help them. Ray sat on the curb beside Ren. His shoulder ached. He rolled it carefully, checking the range of motion. Functional. Painful. He'd had worse. Ren looked at his shoulder. You need a doctor. Later. Ray. Later, he said again. Not dismissive, just the plain priority ordering of a man accustomed to finishing things before attending to himself. His phone was on again. It buzzed. Harlan, he answered. Ruth is safe, Harlan said. We've been out of El Reno for 2 hours. She's with Walt. She's fine. She's asking if you want biscuits. Ray looked at the phone for a moment. Tell her yes, he said. He hung up, looked at Ren. Your grandmother says yes to biscuits. Ren put both hands over her face. Not crying exactly. The thing that happens when the tension finally finds a way out. Ray sat beside her on the curb and let her have a moment. The sirens had stopped. The gray morning was getting lighter. Sterling Page, 12 blocks away, was walking toward a podium in front of 50 people who did not yet know what was on the AP wire. Sterling Page was a man who had spent 30 years becoming indispensable. Not through brilliance, through patience, through the particular political skill of making people feel that you understood them, their worries, their values, their grievances, while never actually committing to anything that cost you anything. He stepped up to the podium, adjusted the microphone, smiled at the crowd. His campaign manager was at the back of the room. Page saw him reach into his jacket pocket, pull out his phone. Look at it. The color left his campaign manager's face. Page was already talking something about Oklahoma values and working families, but he was watching his campaign manager walk quickly toward him from the back of the room. The press pool was in the front rows. 6 journalists, 2 photographers. One of them, a young woman from the Tulsa world, was looking at her phone. Then she looked at Page. Then she raised her hand. Mr. Page, do you have any comment on the AP report that published 40 minutes ago connecting you to Redstone Logistics? The room shifted, the way a room shifts when the air pressure changes. Page gripped the podium. His campaign manager had reached the stage. The Tulsa World journalist continued, the report includes financial documents, photographs, and witness statements. AP is also reporting that 4 individuals associated with the Redstone were arrested in Guthrie this morning. Page said nothing. His mouth was open. Nothing came out. Mr. Page, no comment at this time, his campaign manager said, taking his arm. They moved toward the side exit. 3 men in suits were coming through the front doors. Federal. The kind of federal that had been quietly waiting for exactly the right moment, coordinated by exactly the right phone call from exactly the right retired agent. Sterling Page walked off the stage and did not come back. Nora Bassett sat at her desk and watched the story move. She had been in this business for 40 years. She had learned to recognize the difference between a story that made noise and a story that changed something. This was the second kind. The AP wire had been picked up by 14 outlets within the first hour. By 9 a.m. it was on the national news feeds. By 10 it would be on every television in Oklahoma. She sat with her world's okayest journalist mug and watched it move and felt the particular satisfaction of someone who had done the job exactly as it was supposed to be done. Ray knocked on the open door. She looked up. Come in, she said. Sit down before you fall down. He sat across from her. The shoulder was visibly wrong. You need to get that looked at, she said. I know. Where's the girl? Outside, calling her grandmother. Nora nodded. You did a good thing, she said. Not sentimentally, as a statement of professional fact. I stood next to someone who did a good thing, Ray said. Nora looked at him over her glasses. Ray. She did the work. She held the drive for 3 weeks. She made the call. She chose the location. You just stayed, Nora said. A pause. Yes, he said. That's not nothing, Nora said. That's not a small thing. Don't minimize it. Ray looked at his hands. How long before it gets complicated, he said. For you specifically, Nora said. About a week, I'd guess. She was right. The courtroom was the standard Oklahoma courthouse variety. Oak paneling, high windows. The particular smell of institutional carpet and old paper that said this place has been deciding things for a long time. Ray sat in the defendant's chair. Suit jacket, no tie, the same boots he wore on the road. His shoulder was taped under the jacket, not broken as it turned out, but badly enough strained that the doctor had spent 10 minutes explaining what should have happened given the mechanism of injury. The charge is assault causing bodily harm. 3 counts, filed by the 3 men from the parking lot who were themselves currently facing federal charges. Their attorney had filed these charges as what it was, a countermove, a pressure tactic. The defense attorney assigned through the chapter's legal contact in Tulsa was 41 years old and had a very good record and had explained to Ray 3 times that the case was defensible. Ray had listened politely and felt the particular calm of a man who had stopped being surprised by the world's capacity for bureaucratic irony. He looked straight ahead. In the gallery, Ren sat in the 3rd row. Ruth beside her, small and upright, wearing her good coat. Nora Bassett notebook on her knee out of pure professional habit. Harlan Voss' arms folded the quiet watchfulness of a man accustomed to courtrooms. Vince Radler was in the back row with two other chapter members. They had come without being asked. That was how the chapter worked. The prosecution opened, made its case, produced photographs of three men with documented injuries. Ray's attorney cross-examined, produced the AP wire, produced the federal arrest documents, produced the eyewitness statements from the highway patrol officers who had arrived 4 minutes after the incident. And then the defense called its final witness. The bailiff opened the side door. Cole Pritchard walked in. He was 38 years old, and he walked with a slight hesitation on the right side, a rib that had healed wrong, the doctor had told him, from the beating he'd taken 3 weeks ago in a parking lot outside Chandler. He had a scar above his left ear that would be there permanently. He was not here because anyone had called him. He was not here because anyone had asked him. He had called Ray's attorney 4 days ago, said he'd seen the news, said he'd been at the Guthrie Tribune parking lot that morning. He'd followed Wren's location from a distance, trying to make sure she was safe, not knowing what else to do. Said he'd seen everything. He sat in the witness box. Ray's attorney asked him to describe what he had witnessed. Cole spoke quietly, directly, without performance. He described the SUVs arriving, the 4 men getting out. He described the sequence of events with the precision of someone who had worked security for 8 years and knew how to observe and report. The defendant, Cole said, was attacked first, by 2 men simultaneously. He defended himself. He used reasonable force to stop a physical attack. The prosecution cross-examined, tried several angles. Cole answered every question the same way, with the quiet, unshakable simplicity of someone telling the truth. When he was done, he stepped down from the witness box. He had to walk past the defendant's table. He stopped. Ray looked up at him. Cole had given a drive to a woman he didn't know, had been beaten for it, had spent 3 weeks hiding, had come to this courtroom on his own with a badly healed rib and a permanent scar to tell the truth about what he'd seen. He hadn't done it for a deal. He hadn't done it for attention. He'd done it because it was the right thing to do, and he was someone who did the right thing, and that was the whole of the explanation. Ray stood up. They looked at each other. No words. Ray extended his hand. Cole shook it. That was all. The judge deliberated for 11 minutes. All charges dismissed, she said. The court finds no basis to proceed in light of the totality of evidence presented. The gavel came down. The room exhaled. Ray came out of the courtroom into the high-ceilinged hallway. Harlan was there. Nodded. That was enough. Vince clapped him once on the good shoulder. Also enough. Nora Bassett shook his hand. I'll be in touch, she said, for the record. He nodded. Then Wren. She came out behind the others. Ruth beside her, her hand through Wren's arm. Wren stopped in front of Ray. She looked at him. Not the way she'd looked at him 3 weeks ago in the motel parking lot, that complex assessment of a person deciding whether to trust. This was something different, clearer. Are you okay? She asked. I'm okay, he said. She looked at him for a moment. You're telling the truth this time, she said. Yeah, he said. I am. Ruth let go of Wren's arm, stepped forward. She was a small woman. She reached up and took Ray's hand in both of hers. She didn't say anything for a moment, just held his hand the way people hold things that matter. Thank you, she said, for standing next to her. Ray looked at this 74-year-old woman who had raised a girl alone and taught children for 31 years and made biscuits and kept a bird feeder and sat down with 2 retired federal agents at 5 in the morning and asked for coffee before getting to business. She made it easy, he said. Ruth patted his hand once. Let go. Come for dinner, she said. Saturday, El Reno. I'll make biscuits. Ray almost said, I don't want to impose. He stopped himself. Yes, ma'am, he said. Thank you. He didn't come for the anniversary this time. He came because he wanted to. That was different. The morning was still cold, but the sky had cleared overnight, and the light on the cemetery was the particular clear light of late October that made every color sharp and every shadow precise. He parked the Harley at the gate, walked in. The cemetery was quiet. A groundskeeper in the distance raking leaves, the sound of it carrying across the still air. He came to the 2 stones, stood in front of them. He had the wildflowers, the same ones he brought every year from the field behind the garage. He laid them down, looked at Carol's name, looked at Jessica's name. He stood there for a while, not rushing it, not performing it, just present. I'm sorry I didn't appeal, he said quietly, to Carol specifically. I know you would have wanted me to fight harder. The wind moved through the trees nearby. The leaves turned. There was a girl, he said, 22. She'd been carrying something heavy for 3 weeks and she kept going anyway. She reminded me of Jess, not in how she looks or how she talks, in something else, in the way she decided who she was going to be in the middle of something hard. He was quiet for a moment. I didn't save her, he said. I want to be clear about that. She didn't need saving. She needed someone to stand next to her. That I could do. A bird landed on the branch above the stones. Sat there. I think you'd like her, Ray said. I think you both would. He stood for another minute. I'm going to El Reno for dinner tonight, he said. Ruth Delacourt, Ren's grandmother. She makes biscuits. He almost smiled. I'll be back, he said. Not just once a year. I'll come when I feel like it. I think that's how it's supposed to be. He put his hand briefly on each stone, turned, walked back to the Harley, started the engine. The rumble of it broke the silence and then settled into it the way familiar sounds do. He sat for a moment before pulling away. A man on a bike at a cemetery gate on a Saturday morning, 64 years old, a strange shoulder wrapped under his jacket, a long road behind him in every possible sense. He pulled out of the gate, turned onto the road. The road opened up in front of him, the same road he had ridden 5 days ago, the same sky and bow, the same October trees going amber and rust on either side, the same long, flat Oklahoma distance, but different. The way a road can be the same physical thing and feel different depending on who you are when you're on it. He rode south, not toward anywhere particular, not away from anything, just riding, the way it was supposed to be. There are things I know now that I didn't know a week ago. I know that courage doesn't always look the way you expect it to. Sometimes it's 22 years old and carrying something heavy in a backpack and eating gas station crackers in a parking lot and refusing to put the weight down. I know that standing next to someone is not a small thing. It feels small. It feels like the least you can do. But to the person you're standing next to, it can be everything. I know that the world will try to make certain people believe they take up too much space, that they are too much, that they are inconvenient, that they should make themselves smaller, quieter, easier to overlook. And I know that the most important thing you can do for a person like that is refuse to look away. Just refuse. Carol used to say, and she was right about most things, so I've learned to listen to what I remember she used to say, that love was mostly just a decision to keep paying attention, to not let yourself stop seeing someone, even when it was hard, even when it cost you something. I wasn't paying enough attention for a long time. I'm paying attention now. Ren called me last month. She's back at school. Pre-law. She says she wants to be a prosecutor, the kind that takes the cases other people don't want to touch. I told her the world needs more people like that. She said, you sound like my grandmother. I said, your grandmother is the smartest person in any room she's ever been in. She laughed. First time I'd heard her laugh. It was a good sound. Cole Pritchard is cooperating with the federal investigation. He'll testify when it goes to trial. He's working at a machine shop in Edmond now. We got coffee once. He doesn't talk much. That's fine. Neither do I. Sterling Page is awaiting federal trial. His lawyers are trying various things. They won't work. 19 women were removed from the Redstone facility and connected with support services. 19. That's the number I come back to. Not Page, not the courtroom, not my name in the paper. 19 people who were in a room with no windows, who are now somewhere else. That's the number. I still ride Route 66, the Mother Road. Steinbeck called it that not because it was beautiful, it's not always beautiful, but because it carried people towards something when they had nowhere else to go. I understand that better now than I ever have. I'm 64 years old. I have a bad left knee and a shoulder that forecasts rain. I have a 1987 Harley-Davidson Softail that I built with my own hands. And I have learned late maybe, but I have learned that the road is not something you get to the end of. You just keep going. You pay attention. You stop when someone needs you to stop. And you don't walk away. You just don't walk away.